to fill key positions. Let's discuss now. CNN political analyst Abby Phillip and Tara Palmieri are here. Hello to both of you. Thank you for staying up late.
Thanks for having us, Don.
We appreciate it. Abby, you first. You write in the Washington Post about the Trump administration struggling to fill vacant top government roles. The Post spoke to 27 people to assess what's becoming a debilitating factor in recruiting political appointees. And here's what you write. You say Republicans say they are turning down job offers to work for a chief executive whose volatile temperament makes them nervous. They are asking headhunters if their reputations could suffer permanent damage. I mean, it's a little late for that, but fill us in.
Well, you know, a lot of people, when they decide to take a government job in an administration, especially if they want to come into the White House, it's about sacrificing short-term pain, time with your family, working crazy hours for a potential resume boost in the future. And one of the things that we heard over and over again from people was that they are not sure that that resume boost factor is there in this White House. They're concerned about the Russia probe. They're concerned about a boss who routinely throws his employees under the bus publicly on Twitter and in interviews. They're concerned about a boss who has acknowledged that he doesn't
Are they worried
really,
about legal bills?
Listen, yeah, they're concerned about legal bills. I mean, many of these people are staring down the prospect, having nothing to do potentially with Russia, but still staring down the prospect of really massive six-figure legal bills as a result of the fact that there are 3 ongoing investigations into criminality here in this White House. It's a huge problem for them.
So, Tara, Politico keeps their own version of the White House visitor logs. It keeps track of who gets the most FaceTime with the president and when. And you wrote a great piece detailing how CIA Director Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, and Defense Secretary James Mattis spend the most time at the White House meeting with President Trump. And you write, senior aides say Trump demands FaceTime with his appointees in part because he doesn't trust bureaucrats who do the day-to-day work of the federal government. The president shuns them as tools of what he often refers to as the deep state, and then blames them for frequent unflattering news stories coming from his White House. Oh boy, it sounds like certain news programs I watch, but explain that, please.
Well, President Trump really appreciates time with the principals, and he actually is very proud of some of the members of his cabinet. He introduces them to people as his killers. He says, you know, Rex Tillerson ran the biggest company in the world, and now he runs my State Department. He goes, my Wilbur. When you say his name on Wall Street, everyone knows who he is. All you have to say is Wilbur. So he's very proud of the fact that he has these high net worth individuals and generals who have, you know, 4 stars working for him, and he likes to have them around him. Now, some cabinet secretaries have higher status with the president than others, but at the end of the day, they're all pining to be close to him because, in a way, the way he treats his staff, which is like a shuffling of who's up, who's down, he sort of does the same thing with his cabinet secretaries. So they're all sort of trying to get close to him. Now, senior staffers are sort of complaining that cabinet secretaries are literally coming in and out of the Oval Office all the time. One White House official joked to me, Wilbur basically lives here. Scott Pruitt eats lunch at the White House mess hall all the time just to be close to the president. So, you know, there's sort of this feeling that Trump likes to be close to the principals. Pompeo, the CIA director, he literally spends 3 hours of his day coming from Langley to the White House to give a briefing and then leaving. Traditionally, it would just be a working level briefer that would do that, but Trump doesn't trust these people. He believes he's getting burned by the intelligence community, and he doesn't want leakers around him, and this extends to all of the cabinets.
Yeah, interesting. Wow. It's a little bit, I don't know, I would hate to qualify it, but it sounds a little bit like paranoia. Am I
would say that's right. I mean, but it's not completely unfounded in the sense that there have been a lot of leaks in this White House, especially coming from law enforcement and intelligence. I know that in the beginning I reported that he wouldn't even let specialists in certain regions of the world sit in on him when he was talking to foreign leaders from the National Security Council because he didn't want them near him, able to pass notes and give him some tips during the phone calls. But they were sitting in the Situation Room the whole time listening in, but he just didn't want them in his eyesight.
Okay. I never thought about this, excuse me, but I had never heard Jared Kushner's voice before. And so, look, the president's son-in-law, his top advisor, Jared Kushner, speaking for the first time in months at an event with technology leaders. Listen to this.
We are here to improve the day-to-day lives of the average citizen. That's a core promise, and we are keeping it. Together, we will unleash the creativity of the private sector to provide citizen services in a way that has never happened before. We will foster a new set of startups focused on GovTech and be the global leader in the field, making government more transparent and responsive to citizens' needs.
So, Abby, he has been called the President Trump's Secretary of Everything. So why do you think we rarely hear from him?
Well, he's pretty busy. I mean, he's running a lot of things in this White House. He's in a lot of meetings.
He's running the world.
He's doing a lot of stuff, but I also think that he likes the idea of not being the guy that you see every day, and it's not actually a bad thing, because I think he understands something really important about Trump, which is that if your profile starts to creep up bigger than the boss, he will start to get very irritated with you. Remember the other day he said about Jared, he's starting to get more famous than me. It is very risky to be out front in this White House with this boss. So you have Jared Kushner keeping a fairly low profile, and also maintaining a really broad swath of power throughout the federal government.
Yeah, my favorite thing was, like, he's busy. He's doing a lot of stuff. Right? He is a secretary.
Middle East,
yeah.
G20.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. Thank you. I appreciate it. When we come back, President Trump fails. President Trump fails to personally address the London mosque attack, and critics say his silence speaks volumes.